Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24, coming to you in a week when, let's be honest, there's been much more focus on the United States than on Europe. But the US presidential election is a massive deal for this continent. It also comes just days before the Paris Peace Forum, a massive event here in the French capital, launched in 2018 by President Macron, aimed at promoting multilateralism, something that is widely judged to have suffered during the last 4 years. Well, I'm joined today by the president of the Paris Peace Forum and former Director General of the World Trade Organization, Pascal Lamy. Thank you very much for being our guest.
My pleasure.
Mr. Lamy, let's start with the US presidential election result then. Joe Biden, next US president, he is the person Europe will be dealing with for the next 4 years. Your reaction?
Well, a big moment of relief. I'm happy. I wasn't happy 4 years ago. I'm happier this time, although I know that a Biden president will not change the world, and we still have a host of problems to cope with together, internationally, transatlantic, but I believe that addressing these problems, coping with them, trying to solve them together will be much easier with a Biden administration than with a Trump administration who spent a lot of time trying to simply demolish the multilateral cooperation system.
Well, one of the big impacts that Donald Trump has had directly on Europe has been launching a trade war, slapping heavy tariffs on all sorts of European goods, from French wines to Irish whiskey to steel, aluminium. How much real harm has this done to Europe, or how much is just about optics and politics?
No, it has damaged part of our exports, and it has also damaged part of the US exports because EU retaliated when Trump installed ungrounded tariffs on steel and aluminium, for instance, which he pretended were threats for the US security and defense. So these tariff wars, as could have been expected, have damaged both sides, which is why we should not indulge into this sort of behavior. We have problems to solve, but putting tariffs is not the right way to solve them.
Well, talks on an EU-US trade deal have been on ice for some time. Donald Trump has been in no hurry to get to work on it, and Joe Biden has promised, quote, not to enter any new trade agreements until we have invested in Americans. It doesn't feel like the US is about to kickstart these talks anytime soon. Do you see them happening?
No. I have my own view, for what it's worth, is that this sort of dream of a grand transatlantic trade agreement that would totally open trade between Europe and US is dead for a variety of reasons, some good, some, in my view, less good. If you want to open trade transatlantic, the issue today is not tariffs. Tariffs between US and EU are very low, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's agriculture, and the services flow relatively well. The problem is that we have different regulatory systems on food, on precaution, on capital markets, on architects, on doctors, on nurses, on the size of bumpers. This is the real issue, and it will take a long time for regulators on both sides to adjust, to get to some regulatory convergence. This is not a matter of trade negotiation, it's a matter of regulators' cooperation. So forget a classical grand EU-US trade deal like EU has one with Japan or with Korea. This will not happen.
And just looking at the broader US-Europe relationship, I mean, all eyes in Europe have been very much fixed on what's happening in the US over the past few days. Some say that the EU is too bound up in its transatlantic relationship. It's a big, wealthy trading bloc. Why should Europe still be looking so much to Washington? Indeed, do you think after the 4 years of Donald Trump's administration that Europe is going to take a different path?
Well, let's look at the infrastructures of the economic infrastructures of our planet. Whether we like the US or not politically, whether we have problems with them on defense or on geopolitics, it remains the market number one for the European economy. China and US are the two big economies on this planet. EU is the third. We have a lot of trade and investment relationship with US, with China, and this triangle and the handling of this triangle will obviously be very different with the Biden administration than with the Trump administration, not least because Trump decided to arm twist China lonely. Each time the Europeans went to Washington and said, we also have problems with China, can we cooperate in trying to address them? This will make us stronger vis-à-vis China. Biden sent them back saying, I want to do that myself because I'm the one that's going to arm twist them. So this will change. And I think we can expect China to be a bit more of an EU-US pressure, notably on adjusting the rules of international trade that, as we know, do not discipline enough a number of Chinese practices.
Well, let's talk more broadly about multilateralism. As I mentioned, you're president of the Paris Peace Forum, held on November 11th to 13th, every year since 2018, of course happening virtually this year because of coronavirus. Now, the self-stated mission of the forum is to bridge government gaps in a protectionist age. There are, of course, Russia, the US, China, Turkey, and Europe all vying for dominance at the moment, various degrees of hostility. But here within the European Union, there are a lot of divisions on things like rule of law and migration, but also foreign policy, really, really important matters. Doesn't Europe really need to heal its own internal divisions before it can take a stand on this global stage?
I agree with that. And my own experience, for what it's worth, for the last 30 years in various remits of international life and cooperation, is that the Europeans have their say when they are united. They don't have it when they are divided. So if the Europeans want, and they have good reasons, notably given the behavior of these two big giants, which US and China are and will keep being, if we want to properly defend and promote both our interests and our values, we have to be more united. We are united in trade, and it works, as we've seen in recent years. We are sort of united on environment, and it works. And if Joe Biden goes back to the Paris Agreement, this will be thanks to some sort of leadership in this area by Europe. We are sort of united by a common currency, although we haven't decided that this common currency should be other than a billing. So there is a lot of progress to be made. This will take time, but I think that in the world as it is now structured, with this US-China rivalry which is here to stay, Biden will manage it differently from Trump, but the rivalry is there to stay. We have to probably make our own contribution more solid, and this necessitates more unity, which can only come after, you're absolutely right, after quite a lot of discussion and divisions. But, you know, European integration for the last 70 years has always been about looking at our divisions, discussing, finding agreements, and moving to the next steps.
We've just got a few seconds for a very quick word about Brexit. There's been a bit of a standoff between the EU and the UK on a post-Brexit deal. A little word about it for the past few weeks. The British government keeps saying that it would be content to have what it calls an Australia-style deal if the talks fail. For the sake of clarity, as former head of the World Trade Organization, what does an Australia-style deal mean?
I mean, trading with Australia on EU-Australia terms is just a joke. The EU and Australia have no trade agreement at all. EU and Australia trade between themselves according to WTO rules, which, as I often said, are third division as compared to the first league, which is the internal market. So trading with Australia on Australian EU terms means no trade deal at all, and I think this should not be the way to go. Trade between UK and EU has to be open, up to the British to decide how much they want to distance themselves from the European Union in the way you regulate your economy, in the way you decide on pesticide residues, or norms for nurses or architects. This is what Brexit is really about. The UK has exited the European Union politically. How much does it want to exit economically? This is the real issue of Brexit, and I'm not sure the UK government has a very clear view on that yet.
Pascal Lamy, thank you so much for your time. And thanks to you very much for watching Talking Europe. Hope to see you very soon here on France 24.